Guess what, dude? They're protesting so that Israel actually follows through on the current ceasefire deal that is in play. So yeah, I'm gonna fucking support the goddamn protests in Israel. I'm saying it. Let's get to Israel.
Breaking news regarding the Middle East, because the UK Foreign Secretary has just announced a partial suspension of export arms licenses to Israel. It covers 30 arms export licenses.
The assessment I have received leaves me unable to conclude anything other than that for certain UK arms exports to Israel, there does exist a clear risk that they might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law.
Isn't it better for Bibi to stay in power from an accelerationist, destabilizing Israeli society POV other than some stabilizing force like a marginally more fascistic, especially with regard to the West Bank Aqsa compound general? That's insane, dude. For the short term, I think the immediate goal for a lot of people is to facilitate a ceasefire. It has gotten to such a point where the contradictions are so glaring that even Israeli society, after 6 Jewish Israeli hostages were executed by Hamas in a fucking tunnel compound, are still mad at Benjamin Netanyahu instead. Why are they mad at Benjamin Netanyahu instead? Because 3 of those 6 hostages were named in the hostage negotiations proposal. They would have been free at this point. You know, what, 3 months in to the American plan? They'd be moving to the fucking phase 2 by now. We would have already gotten all of those hostages out at this point, and more hostages would be coming out. Except he literally fucking refused to do that. And that is precisely the reason why Israeli society is like, dog, what the fuck are you doing? Even people who personally are like, dude, keep pummeling Gaza. I don't give a fuck. But you have to save these fucking Israelis. About Bibi, the USA is for sure turning on him. Biden did this morning in a candid moment, and Harris to be determined this week, in my opinion. Yeah, I've lost all faith. Unironically, I have more faith in like Israeli protesters that literally want to fucking pummel Gaza in the dust than I do with the American administration. Because at least those people have some skin in the game. They don't give a fuck about what Israel is doing in Gaza. Some of them do, but many of them don't. But regardless, they still want these material demands because they have a personal vested interest in at least the ceasefire happening. I don't give a fuck what the American government says. The American government can suck my dick. I have not heard a single fucking peep from either of these pieces of shit, these genocidal fucking monsters on Israel, that is even beneficial for them from an electoral perspective. So I'm fucking done with them until I see like actual material changes, okay? I don't give a fuck what they say behind closed doors. I don't have any fucking faith in them whatsoever goddamn ever. They've shown zero proof that they are actually invested in facilitating a ceasefire. They hold all the cards to ensure that this happens, and yet they have not moved in that direction even a little bit. Kamala Harris outflanked even the fucking Keir Starmer Labor government in the sentiments expressed post the retrieval of the 6 hostages that were shot and killed. She outflanked the Israeli society. She literally did not even mention the ceasefire. You know who did mention the ceasefire? The fucking parents of the goddamn hostage that was killed by name. Not only literally name Benjamin Netanyahu as the most significant person responsible for the death of their children, they straight up named the policy poison pill that Benjamin Netanyahu has added onto this ceasefire proposal in an effort to continue this song and fucking dance. They are the ones who are recognizing it because they had so much more to lose than the American government. So fuck Kamala Harris, fuck Joe Biden. It is wild to me that you got American Israeli parents of one of the fucking hostages writing a letter, not only singling out Benjamin Netanyahu, but also singling out the exact ways in which Benjamin Netanyahu is refusing to deal by mentioning the Philadelphi Corridor as a point of contention that Benjamin Netanyahu has used in an effort to continue the hostage negotiations without any sort of productive outcome. When they're doing that and the American government is outflanking them and saying, this is on Hamas only, Hamas only, Hamas only, we will end Hamas militarily, a goal that is so unachievable that Israeli generals have recognized that it is unachievable. I don't care. They do not have a dog in this fight. They do not give a shit. And they don't even care if they fucking lose the election as a consequence of this. They have not moved an inch from unquestionable support for Israel. Saying you're against something you're fucking facilitating is criminal, but they're not even saying they're against it. That's the other part. They're never saying that they're against it. You have to listen. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu was digging his fucking heels in. Bibi had a press conference today that was insane. He dug in, essentially killing any illusion on a deal. He also told his generals to shut the fuck up because he's the boss. And here's Benjamin Netanyahu's press conference. Here's the map that he showed. Of course, the West Bank does not exist on Netanyahu's map, and Gaza is forever Israeli enclave. This speech will go down in history as Netanyahu's open admission to the world that Israel will remain between the river and the sea indefinitely as long as he rules. And Americans in positions of power, American leadership is going, la, 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 I can't hear you. The Israeli government is telegraphing this shit. Netanyahu isn't doing enough to get a Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal. My report on Axios. Before leaving the White House to Pittsburgh, Biden was asked by reporters to comment on Netanyahu's remarks about the Philadelphi Corridor. We are still negotiating the final hostage and ceasefire deal proposal. We're not negotiating with him. I'm negotiating with my colleagues and with Egypt and Qatar, Biden said. The president's comments suggested the final bridging proposal will be presented to the parties without further U.S. consultation with Israel. It's fucking bullshit. They should have done this months ago. Full statement from Abu Ubaidah, the spokesman for Hamas's Al-Qassam brigades, on the killing of the 6 hostages in Gaza, announced Sunday by Israel. He appears to confirm they were killed by their guards as a result of a change in policy implemented after a previous Israeli rescue operation in Nusayrat in June. Here is the statement. Netanyahu and the occupation army alone bear full responsibility for the deaths of the captives as they deliberately obstructed any prisoner exchange deals for narrow interests, in addition to intentionally killing dozens of them through direct airstrikes. We say to everyone clearly that after the Nusayrat incident, new instructions were issued to the fighters assigned to guard the captives regarding how to deal with them in the event of the occupation army approaching their detention location. Netanyahu's insistence on freeing the captives through military pressure instead of making a deal will mean their return to their families in coffins. Their families must choose, either dead or alive. This is why I told you, you will never have a situation where Hamas just like voluntarily kills a hostage for no reason whatsoever. I told you this since October 8th. Regardless of the way that they're presented as like barbarian rapist monsters, they obviously have like a line of logic here in the violence that they dish out when there is literally a ceasefire proposal on the table for 3 goddamn months that the American government actually put together, that the United Nations voted for, and Benjamin Netanyahu is still like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then they try to militarily extract some of these hostages. Yes, they are going to increase the pressure by doing this. It is brutal. It is barbaric, but there is a logical reason for it. You're engaging in diplomatic negotiations and Israel sends in military commandos to try and free the hostages behind the back of that diplomacy. What the fuck do people expect to happen? Yeah, I mean, this is literally pretty basic stuff. Don't defend this. Still murder them, though. Don't defend this fucked up logic. I don't think you understand what I'm saying. They murdered them because the alternative is for them to be free through the ceasefire negotiation. This is a reality that many Israelis, hundreds of thousands of them that took to the fucking streets, also recognize. So I don't know why you are in the United States of America refusing to reckon with that reality. If there was no ceasefire negotiation on the fucking table and they were doing that, then yes, you're right. It's slaughter. It's butchering. Obviously, murder is brutal. Kidnapping is brutal. And the hostage freeing operations cost the lives of hundreds of Palestinians. Yeah, exactly. The reason why they spelled out why they changed their policies because of the Nusayrat operation in June in an effort to extract a couple Israelis militarily. They killed hundreds of Palestinians with airstrikes. So murdering 6 is okay with you as long as they have a reason. While you're defending murder, you psycho. Typical though, but Hasan said they have a reason. It's okay. Warhawks like you justify murder as long as it's your team. Disgusting. I never said it was okay. I'm simply telling you who is at fault here. And I even gave you an alternative to understand if there was no ceasefire deal on the table and if they just simply kidnapped these people and were just killing them voluntarily for funsies, then yes, they would be brutal, barbaric psychopaths who are operating with only one interest. Don't say fuck off. Try to understand. We're 2 human beings having a conversation here. I'm offering you the dignity. I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm trying to explain to you, hoping that there is like a human inside of your fucking mind that will understand when we're having a person-to-person dialogue here. Weirdo, condescending LA cunt. What was condescending about what I just said? Yes, both sides are wrong. Is there taking hostages? Why are we justifying taking hostages? Fuck this logic, lol. There is no justification for taking hostages. If you think that it's like Hamas taking hostages on their own for no fucking particular reason, then you're completely oblivious to the 76-year occupation and apartheid that has taken place and the 10,000 hostages that are Palestinian in Israeli prisons right now under permanent detention, 99% conviction rate in military tribunals, completely ridiculous. 10,000 Palestinians that are currently being held hostage. This was one of the demands made by the Palestinian resistance group in a last-ditch desperate effort to ensure they could release some of these people at the very least. Netanyahu has been citing Biden's ironclad support of him as the reason he does not have to work harder to get a hostage deal, incredibly rich of Biden, and complain about the consequences of his own actions. Netanyahu told Gallant in the cabinet meeting, "I want to release all of our hostages no less than you. I fought for the release of the hostages no less than you. And I was injured in one of those operations. I believe that the path I am leading of standing firm is the right path. Since we passed the last cabinet meeting, a super justified decision regarding the Philadelphi Corridor, now we cancel it? After the terrible murder of our hostages, such a step will send a dangerous message to Hamas and will lead to more concessions that will endanger Israel's security, like making a complete withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, to allow the smuggling of hostages in Sinai, and from there to Iran. I said yes to the Americans on May 27th and August 16th. There is flexibility in the negotiations, but not on the principle of the Philadelphi Corridor, which is Hamas's lifeline. After the U.S. agreed, why do you object?" Netanyahu unironically said that the strikers are doing Hamas's bidding, echoing what you said yesterday. I told you that he was going to say that. Yoav Gallant on the UK arms restrictions. Deeply disheartened to learn of the sanctions placed by the UK government on export licenses to Israel's defense establishment. This comes at a time when we fight a war on 7 different fronts, a war that was launched by a savage terrorist organization unprovoked, at a time when we mourn 6 hostages who were executed in cold blood by Hamas inside tunnels in Gaza, at a time when we fight to bring 101 hostages home. I stand by our troops and security agencies, working with immense courage, professionalism, and moral values. We remain committed to defending the state of Israel and her people. Again, the more this kind of pressure increases, the more Israel refuses to recognize that they are a pariah state that everyone else notices is behaving in this unhinged manner. This is going to push Israel further and further into a firm commitment to nationalism, fascism. They're already there. 7 fronts, unprovoked. Hilarious. Here's the cousin of a dead hostage on CNN, by the way. Let's hear what he had to say before people accuse me further and further of being like anti-Semitic or some shit.
He's going to go with his media circus and say that he apologized to us. So we didn't want to be a part of this horrible charade. He is going to use the murder of my cousin in order to keep the war going, and this is exactly I'm furious. You know, it's exactly what he does. It's his responsibility that they were killed. He could have saved them. Hamas is a terror organization. We blame him for the killing, the execution of the hostages, of course. But on the other side, I want to see a nation that believes in life and not another politician who believes that he can use death as a weapon.
Whoa. A lot of people are getting banned before I can even read their fucking insane commentary. Hold on, chatters. Israel should follow suit and kill all the Palestinian hostages. I agree with HasanAbi. There should be consequences. How are there supposed to be? Tens of thousands seems like a good start. Well, Israel has already killed tens of thousands of people in its offensive genocide. 40,000 to be exact. It seems like you forgot about that number. Now you're talking about the 10,000 people that are currently detained in Israeli facilities. They are killing them. They're raping them to death. And then the Israeli society, in certain instances, is actually celebrating that achievement as though it's actually something that is permissible. They made one of the fucking main rapists a television personality after it came out that he was one of the main rapists. So they're already doing that. Yesterday, a senior Hamas official, Khalil al-Hayya, said that Hamas had lost contact more than 3 months ago with the people guarding dual U.S.-Israel citizen Hersh Goldberg, Poland, and 4 other captives after intense Israeli bombing. Al-Qassam Brigades had announced that publicly on social media channels on May 13th. Al-Qaeda told Al Jazeera yesterday, since that day, nothing has been known about his life. This might potentially be the older video that they posted about. You freed 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for Gilad Shalit. Now they're asking for less than a quarter of that number for each one of us. I am not able to comprehend. Am I worth less? I'm an Israeli citizen who had fulfilled and continues to fulfill my obligations to my country. Why am I still here until now? I ask all the people of Israel to take to the streets and demonstrate. Shout on our behalf what we cannot shout. We are all suffering and we want to go back to our homes and families. Everything that happened to us is because of the failure of the state of Israel and its security forces on October 7th. She said 1,000 terrorists, not 1,000 Palestinians. A message to my family that I love. I miss you, father, mother, sister, Shani, and May. I love and miss you all so much. Do you think she said this of her free will, or do you think she was pressured to make this statement? I mean, there's always going to be coercion, dude. She's a fucking hostage. Of course it's coerced. What matters is whether there is truth and validity to what she's saying. One aspect of it that a chatter said was Benjamin Netanyahu freed 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for Gilad Shalit. Turns out she actually didn't say 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. She said 1,000 Palestinian terrorists. Hamas today released a Daniel Pearl-style video of the 6 Israeli hostages pre-execution and promised the worst video to come. Oh, shit. They probably fucking filmed the execution, too. Oh, Jesus. This is something that I'm wondering about. How does it track that Hamas hasn't been in contact with the fighters holding Hirsch and others since May? Yet Abu Abaida said new instructions were given to those guarding the hostages after the Nusayrat massacre, which was in June. Yeah. I don't understand the inconsistency either. One other aspect of this is, of course, also the leadership of Hamas has exchanged hands after the Israeli assassination of the Politburo chief, who was seen as the more moderate force inside of Hamas, who was not a military man at all, into Yahya Sinwar, head of the military wing. They could have changed tactics in a more brutal fashion as a consequence of that as well. The U.S. wants UN Special Rapporteur on Palestine, Francesca Albanese, removed. Bipartisan group of congresspeople demanded her ouster early this year. Last month, the U.S. ambassador to the UN said Albanese is not fit for any UN post. I asked Albanese about this, her response. I also understand that I'm one of the most problematic voices these days because I'm in the UN and I expose the falsehood that is spread by Israel, the criminal aspects of this war, and which is also something that the U.S. is complicit with. So, of course, it's upset them. There is always someone who's suffering more than me, which is the Palestinians. I can bear the brunt of the criticism from powerful states who are providing the means to enact the genocide. Anyone who says the truth on this, immediately they're cast aside. They're called anti-Semitic. A narrative that does not work any longer, for the record, which is, for the short term, not the worst thing, but for the long term will lead to dire consequences in general, because I do suspect that there is like a lot of underlying anti-Semitism that exists in Western society. And I do think that all of this like cynical anti-Semitism deflections and anti-Semitism shields that have been deployed in an effort to defend Israel and connect Israel's violent, bloodthirsty actions to Judaism will cause a shit ton of anti-Semitism to fester and grow in Western society. It is truly, truly terrifying. The UK only suspended 30 exports out of 350. It's still a significant choice, okay? You want to know why it's important? Your protests are obviously working. Even the fact that they have to act in this direction implies that they are hearing you and they're moving in a direction that they've never fucking moved in. If you think that this is nothing, I don't know what to tell you, okay? In the last 10 years that I have professionally covered this genocide, this apartheid, spoken out for Palestinian emancipation, I've never seen Western leadership move in this direction. It used to be considered unconscionable. It was a non-starter. So the fact that it's happening now means the dam is breaking.
And he is therefore today announcing the suspension of around 30 from a total of approximately 350 to Israel as required under the Export Controls Act, such as important components which go into military aircraft, including fighter aircraft, helicopters and drones.
US President Joe Biden is meeting with the American negotiating team who've been taking part in the Gaza ceasefire talks. He called the meeting after the body of a US-Israeli citizen was recovered along with 5 others in southern Gaza on Saturday.
What makes you think that this deal will be successful in a way that the other deals were not?
Hope springs eternal.
Mr. President, do you think it's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do more on this issue? Do you think he's doing enough?
No.
Nice, man. Yeah, good shit. Hey, this guy's the president still, by the way. Meanwhile, while we're having this conversation, it seems protesters are swarming Benjamin Netanyahu's house. You predicted it. You said if they kill them, they'll record it to put pressure and make it a spectacle. Exactly. Bad move, PR disaster. You're demonstrably wrong if you think that this was a bad move and a PR disaster. Do you think the fucking Palestinian resistance groups personally think there's any more PR? There's never been PR in this situation. It's like saying October 7 was bad PR. Brother, they've been getting fucking slaughtered. They've been existing under a goddamn apartheid for 76 fucking years. And there has been an ongoing genocide beyond that for the past 11 months. The fuck do you mean PR? Do you think that they give a fuck about the optics of the situation? In some respects, it has literally caused Israeli society to finally fucking take action with popular mobilization against Benjamin Netanyahu for his refusal to literally fucking come to the table with the ceasefire agreement that is in place. Israel kills hostage today after torturing him. Just so you know, this won't make broader news. Israeli forces return body of Palestinian man an hour after his arrest. Israeli forces arrested Ayman Abed, a 58-year-old Palestinian from the occupied West Bank, and returned his body to his family an hour later. Doctors said he died as a result of beatings and torture. That's a daily existence. That's a daily occurrence, by the way, almost. They'll just forcibly fucking arrest someone, detain them, beat the shit out of them, torture them. Some of them die, and then they just return the body. I've never seen this quick of a fucking turnaround on the process like this. I suspect that it was done in pure anger as a consequence of the 6 hostages that were killed. Yeah, they kidnap. Sorry, it's not an arrest. Do you think the U.S. has had enough of Benjamin Netanyahu not obeying? No. He was sleeping on his roof beforehand with his family. That won't make a dent. That won't make a blip. No one will ever fucking talk about this in the Western media. You want to know why? Because Palestinian lives are not real lives.
Now, Kimberly, how important is it for Biden and Harris to control the narrative and to reach something that resembles a conclusion to all of this ahead of the November election?
For Kamala Harris, this is critical. This is really becoming an attack line for her political opponents, Republican and former President Donald Trump. You've got to remember that Kamala Harris, as vice president, is tied to what the American public perceives to be the foreign policy blunders of Joe Biden already.
I mean, this is literally what I said was going to happen. If Kamala Harris does not cut ties with Biden on this issue, she will be forced into being associated with Biden on this issue. Every misstep that Biden has taken thus far over the course of the past 11 fucking months that Americans are pissed off about will now be Kamala Harris's fuck ups as well. It will have electoral consequences because Israel has not done anything differently so far. And why should they? Because the craven U.S. politicians have given Benjamin Netanyahu everything it wants. If you're teaching them the lesson that, like, we will stand by you no matter what happens, why should Benjamin Netanyahu change course? Foreign policy does not move elections until it's the only thing that people think about and it's the only thing that people talk about. There's a likelihood that leaving Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump's best buddy, on the table, allowing him to do a fucking October surprise at the behest of Donald Trump is insane to me. I gave you a historic example with Humphreys versus LBJ in the Vietnam War. He did not separate until it was far too late, and that cost him the election. It is crazy that they do not recognize this. Now let's talk about Benjamin Netanyahu asking for forgiveness over hostage killings as he warns about Hamas will pay a very heavy price.
I am asking for your forgiveness that we did not manage to bring them back still alive. And I would also like to once again repeat this evening, Israel will not stand silently, doing nothing, facing this massacre. Hamas will pay a very heavy price for that. We have set 4 goals: to eradicate Hamas, to bring back all of our hostages, to make sure that Gaza no longer poses a threat over Israel, and to allow the people of Israel living in the north return home safely. 3 of these goals go through one place, and that is the Philadelphi Corridor. First of all, I'd like to show you what we had over the years until we pulled out of there. This is the state of Israel, this is Egypt, and you can see the Gaza Strip here, and you can see that throughout these borders, the maritime border is under our control, but the land, the ground border isn't under our control. Ashkelon, Sderot, the Kibbutzim, the Kerem Shalom passage, and here, when we pulled out of Gaza, this is what happened. The borders remained in our hands. They tried breaking through the maritime border. Remember the Marmara and some other events and flotillas.
Yeah, that was a humanitarian aid ship that you fucking destroyed. Mavi Marmara is what he's talking about. It was a Turkish humanitarian aid ship that they fucking sent commandos into and killed everyone on, and then fucking lied and said they had weapons, and they only showed like a bunch of fucking kitchen knives.
We pulled out of the Philadelphi Corridor. This is the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. And once we pulled out of there, there was no obstacle left from a massive infusion of weapons and means of warfare and machines for manufacturing weapons and machines for digging tunnels, all of that under the auspices of Iran, with the funding of Iran. So now the question remains, and people ask me this question, well, if it was that bad, how come you didn't conquer it?
The reason why he is like specifically talking about the Philadelphia Corridor is because pretty much everyone in the Israeli protests are cognizant of the real spoiler in the ceasefire and hostage release negotiations that have been taking place. Everyone understands that Benjamin Netanyahu keeps adding additional poison pill provisions into the pre-existing framework, specifically to continue the war, continue the genocide. That's why they keep mentioning the Philadelphia Corridor and the permanent military occupation of Gaza as a reason. They know that. So now he's turning around and trying to explain away why he's like, we have to have this permanent military occupation on the southern border, because then they'll take the hostages out from that border and they'll sneak them into Iran and we'll never see them ever again and all this other bullshit. The irony, of course, is that, dude, if you did the fucking ceasefire deal, you would have the hostages. And everybody understands this, with the exception of dumbass Americans. And the reason why, and I hate to say this, dumbass Americans don't understand it, is because our media does not actually fucking cover the situation and has done a great disservice in an effort to continue the Biden administration's absolutely insane suicide pact with Benjamin Netanyahu. This is all like, hey, sorry the 6 hostages were killed, but here's why they had to be. This entire PowerPoint, this racist ass PowerPoint, is straight up to be like, this is why the 6 people were killed, okay? Sucks to suck. I don't think that it's working for Israeli society. I don't think they give a fuck about his personal ambitions. And that's why he says it simply won't happen. Netanyahu, in a message to the Biden administration on a proposal to withdraw Israeli troops from the Philadelphia Corridor and the Gaza-Egypt border in a hostage ceasefire deal. What this means basically is, I'm not dealing with the ceasefire. You have to cave. You have to concede to my demand. By the way, of course, his own defense minister is urging the security cabinet to reverse decision to keep IDF on the Philadelphia corridor, says hostages must be brought home. Yoav Gallant, who is the other war criminal named by the ICC, is literally at odds with Benjamin Netanyahu. Other prominent military officials within the Israeli occupying forces have come out over the course of many, many months at this point and have said there is no military solution to Hamas. There is no permanent military occupation. We cannot maintain a permanent military occupation. This is ludicrous. This is insane. Minister Ron Derman at the cabinet meeting, it would be a grave mistake to change the decision from Thursday regarding the Philadelphia corridor. To even talk about it will be a disaster that will incentivize murder. We should exert a very heavy price from Hamas for murdering the hostages. That will make it clear to them that it must not happen again. Except you have done that, dumbass. You've killed 40,000 plus Palestinians. You've destroyed every fucking inch of the Gaza Strip. There is no heavier cost to incur in this circumstance. It's just one fucking note, one speed. From the Israeli state broadcaster Khan, Prime Minister Netanyahu is trying to convince the public of the importance of the Philadelphia Axis when he was unable to convince neither Defense Minister Gallant nor the head of the Mossad Barna nor Chief of Staff Halevi on this matter. Bro, the fucking public broadcaster is bouldering the Netanyahu cabinet. Netanyahu single-handedly at this point. And the American media and the American leadership is not doing that. It is mind-boggling how fucking bad their instincts are. Fuck. This is Bibi defining total victory when asked in English.
I was asked whether I'm not doing enough to the release of hostages. I want to set the record straight. On April 27th, Secretary of State Blinken said that Israel made an extraordinarily generous offer for a hostage deal. On May 31st, Israel agreed to a U.S.-backed proposal. Hamas refused. On August 16th, Israel...
Yeah, he lied. It's funny that he's saying this in English because guess what? Everybody who understands Hebrew that's in that fucking room knows exactly what he did in that process. Because in Hebrew, in Israel, he kept saying, there's no fucking hostage deal. I don't know what these American dumbasses are on about. But when he's speaking in English, he's like, oh, yeah, Anthony Blinken said, you know, we made these generous proposals. I mean, it's so generous. Like, it's crazy to me that so many people in Israel speak English. So many people see what he's doing. But it doesn't fucking matter because that question and that answer is for us in the Western world, for us in America, for us in the UK, for dumbasses that want to maintain this facade.
On August 19th, Secretary Blinken said, Israel accepted the U.S. proposal. Now Hamas must do the same. On August 28th, that's 5 days ago, Deputy CIA Director said that Israel shows seriousness in the negotiations. Now Hamas must show the same seriousness. What has changed in the last 5 days? These murderers executed 6 of our hostages. They shot them in the back of the head. And now after this, We're asked to show seriousness?
This is for the Western world. This does not work in Israel any longer. This conversation that took place a couple hours ago in English is one thing, but what's going on right now in Israel is an entirely separate thing. So do not be duped. Here it is. Lirat Shavit in Jerusalem. Determined protesters break through the police barricades to get to Netanyahu's residence. Do not be fooled by Western media charlatans as to what the fuck is actually going on. Israeli society is not oblivious to what the fuck is going on. They might hate Hamas, they might hate Palestinians, but they also fucking understandably recognize that there is one person who is at odds with even his own war cabinet in terms of his own personal military goals and his own selfish agenda. I thought you said they want Palestinians raped, so he's lying about Israel agreeing to the deal. You know what's really funny? Those two things are not at odds. That's what I keep repeating. There are people in Israel right now who personally do not give a fuck about what Israel has done in Gaza. Many, according to polls. Every poll keeps consistently showing these two realities. 2/3 of Israeli society literally does not care about what's going on in Gaza or wants it to continue. But 2/3 of Israeli society also want to fuck a ceasefire and a hostage deal. They're protesting because these guys are fucking barbaric and they're going to murder our people. We know they're rapists and bloodthirsty, but they've offered a fucking olive branch in this situation to allow our Israeli friends and family members to escape. And you're not taking it. That's their mentality. There are, of course, a lot of people in Israeli society now, more people than ever before, that are legitimately saying they want a ceasefire and they do care about Palestinians and whatnot. That number has definitely grown in Israeli society over the course of the past couple of months. Having said that, the broadest majorities are obviously still very much in favor of what Netanyahu has done in Gaza. Having said that, however, they still want a ceasefire. They're like, we know they're murderers. Why the fuck won't you deal with them with the negotiations process? All the PowerPoint and the chirping about the Philadelphi Corridor, it's for the segments of Israeli society that did not participate in the mass mobilization that took place earlier today. It is for the Bibis. It is for the Likudniks. It is for the Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Jewish Power Party supporters. It is for the settlers, because there are still a shit ton of those guys in Israel who also are like, yeah, fuck the hostages. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, kill them all. I guess technically Biden is a bigger dick rider because he's like ideologically invested in Israel. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is like materially invested in terms of like Miriam Adelson giving him $100 million and demanding that like the West Bank be permanently annexed in the same way that Donald Trump gave Golan Heights to Israel, right? Like Joe Biden doesn't even get that kind of play. Joe Biden is not as well liked in Israel as Donald Trump is. Donald Trump's more popular than Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. Trump's actions are directly responsible for October 7. Like his actions of giving Israel everything, Abraham Accords, all of that greatly worsened the conditions of everyday Palestinians and greatly increased the brutality that Palestinians were subjected to. And I talked to Palestinians in Gaza, and even they personally think, well, under Trump, we weren't being bombed this hard. They see the Democratic Party sending bombs to Israel, and those bombs are being used to kill their friends, to kill their families. I know what the truth is. The truth is, of course, Trump would be significantly worse. The truth is, Trump has been significantly worse, but it does not matter because Trump is currently not the president, and that gives him a shit ton of benefits in terms of how he can message out of this. So do we give Trump a chance? Fuck no. I'm not saying that, man. I'm not saying that at all. There's a difference between what the truth is and how people perceive it. Yeah, he just says he will negotiate perfectly and end this war. Genius how vague it is. Exactly. It's the same principle behind Donald Trump being like, I'm going to cut prices. I'm going to cut grocery prices. Kamala Harris comes out and says, this is how we're going to cut grocery prices. He says, that's communism. How are you going to cut grocery prices? I'm going to cut it. Also, Trump has given way too many flip-flop passes by the public and the media. He can tell Palestinians will end the war while also telling Israelis and Jews will finish the job, and no one bothers to question him because he's Trump. Exactly. The protests are good because it's like at least getting some fucking real coverage in American media for the first time ever, communicating some of these desires that completely go against the American position and completely go against American State Department propaganda.
In Gaza. He's placing all the blame on Hamas, saying whoever murders hostages does not want a deal. Marcus Moore is on the scene in Israel. Good morning, Marcus.
Overnight, thousands packing the streets of Tel Aviv to protest the deaths of 6 more hostages. Protesters blocking a highway in Tel Aviv, setting fires, demonstrating against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's handling of the war. Israeli police seen clashing with protesters, arresting dozens, and using water cannons to disperse the crowd, dragging and pushing them through the streets. Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland among those murdered. Richmond, Virginia Rabbi David Asher, a friend of the Poland family, horrified by the news.
Beautiful boy who was taken way too soon. It's horrible and tragic that so many civilians have died in Gaza during this war.
I spoke with Hirsch's mother earlier this summer after a video of him in captivity was released to the public.
The hostages are pawns in a game. Their families are pawns in a game that we didn't sign up for.
What do you think finally made Biden go, Bibi isn't doing enough? Dude, I don't care, okay? I don't care that Biden finally said Bibi isn't doing enough. Until he says, we are going to follow international law, we're going to follow American law that is already in the books in terms of weapons transfers to Israel. We cannot do it anymore because Israel is very clearly committing gross human rights violations, and therefore we cannot give them any more weapons. It is against the law. It is illegal under American law to continue giving weapons to a country that is openly violating international law. Ain't nobody's out here demanding Biden fucking, invade Tel Aviv or some shit, which you could make an argument under international human rights and international law to do such a thing, but we're not even saying that. People are simply saying, follow the fucking law in the goddamn books, because he is in contravention of international law and also American law every single time they send weapons to Israel. Every single time.
Both sides trading blame. Netanyahu saying Sunday, quote, he who murders hostages does not want a deal. An Israeli security official confirming to ABC News 3 of the killed hostages were set to be released, according to a July draft of the ceasefire deal.
This is the most damning part of this.
Aviva, the wife of Israeli-American hostage Keith Siegel, concerned her husband could be killed at any moment.
We need all the hostages home.
This morning, the protest continuing as thousands take to the streets demanding the hostages be released.
Israeli court orders end to the general strike in Tel Aviv.
To the streets of Tel Aviv, continuing with their protest, blocking the city's main highway. A court in Israel says a general strike currently taking place across the country must now end.
Let's be real, they're not protesting for Palestinians or see them as human. Yeah, no shit. It doesn't fucking matter, though. You understand that, right? Because guess what, dude? They're protesting so that Israel actually follows through on the current ceasefire deal that is in play. A ceasefire deal that Hamas has said yes to. So yeah, I'm gonna fucking support the goddamn protests in Israel.
Public sector workers are out on strike. Businesses, shops, restaurants are closed. Public transport's not running. Ben Gurion Airport has been closed to flights landing and taking off as well. Now we think that strike is going to end at 6 o'clock this evening. The government is opposing it in court. But whilst that strike is going on today, people are using it as an opportunity to come out again and protest against the government and against Benjamin Netanyahu.
The goal is economic paralysis within Israel. The first general strike began with the aim of pressuring for a prisoner exchange deal with the support and participation of the Israeli Labor Federation, the Hizdatrut. The strike was initially scheduled for only a few hours during the day, but there are now new discussions to extend it until tomorrow with the addition of new sectors, and it is subject to further renewal depending on the developments of the political discussions and negotiations. One of the methods of strike is blocking important roads and preventing movement. Very anti-Semitically, for the record. Baggage conveyors at airports have stopped, and no planes are taking off. Work was expected to resume at 10 a.m., but was postponed until the evening, with the possibility of extending until tomorrow. Ben Gurion Airport is completely closed, anti-Semitically, as I might add. Haifa Port is out of service since this morning, anti-Semitically, as I might add. The strike has affected government offices, banks, and public transport. It was expected to end at 10 a.m., but there are now discussions about extending it. The government has filed a case in the labor court to force the union to stop its strike. The labor court forces the union to end the strike within half an hour from now because the union has no right to interfere in political affairs, and thus the government wins the case. Sheba Hospital also refused to treat wounded Israeli soldiers due to the strike. Holy fuck. They're doing literal fucking BDS. They're doing BD us. Anyway, let's hear what Ilan Pape had to say about the strikes.
Vast numbers of people still out on the street there, despite the Labour court ordering the end of the strike that was called by the trade union on the basis that it was politically motivated.
Yes, of course they are. This is just the way that those who represent the legal system in Israel are trying to navigate between their full understanding, and they already recognize that Netanyahu has breached almost every law in the book of laws of Israel on the one hand, and the fact that they depend on him to survive in their positions, whether it is the chief prosecutor or the legal advisor to the government. This is a game. This has nothing to do with legality or illegality. This is a balance of power by which, until now at least, the base of Netanyahu, his coalition allies, and himself are still the ones who determine Israeli policies inside Israel and towards the Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, and towards the north, towards South Lebanon. It's funny how we sort of think that we are hearing some dramatic news, where actually we see the repeat of the same news again and again. Netanyahu is going to reject the American proposal, whatever it is. He doesn't think that the Americans are in any position to really pose danger to his position in the government. There's going to be a lot of talk, but very little action on the ground. And I'm afraid we need something far more drastic than an American proposal that tries to satisfy Netanyahu's demands that keep changing because he doesn't want a deal and he doesn't want to end the fighting.
Rachel, Pauline Goldberg, the whole 11 months that we are all in this struggle together, all the families, she told us hope is mandatory. And this is something that we all kept inside of us. And we felt that we don't have a choice. This is our family. This is our loved ones. We have to be hopeful and to know that this is going to end eventually. But after the devastating news that we all got on Saturday, I'm feeling, I don't know, devastating, broken. I don't have words to express how we all feeling. I don't want to say like hopeless, but it was a tough moment for all of us.
We feel like this proposal is now or never proposal, and I hope they will take it seriously and say, yes, let's go.
15 meetings you've had with American officials.
Yes.
Do you get a sense that the White House is doing everything it can, or would you like to see them doing more?
We see the dedication, and I wish to see the same dedication and commitment from the Israeli government as we see from the American government.
I was going to ask you, when the Prime Minister was in Washington in July, you had an opportunity to speak with him.
Correct.
What did you tell him, and what would you tell him now?
We sat together at the cabinet room. I sat next to him, literally a foot away from him. And I personally asked him, assuming that Hamas needs the deal, and they need the deal, and they say, yes, let's go, what happened then? He told us, we go and we execute the deal.
Yeah, so I sat next to Benjamin Netanyahu, and he just lied to my face. Because at the time while this was happening, I'm almost certain that there was a deal, which is crazy. Like, Benjamin Netanyahu straight up looked at this dude's face and was like, oh, yeah, dude, I would love to do a deal with Hamas. It's just that I just have so many additional reasons as to why I can't, that I keep adding new reasons as to why I simply cannot.
A month later, with 6 hostages dead, that never had to happen.
Yeah.
He's prolonging the war for the short political reasons, and time passing by, and we're getting more bodies out of Gaza. This is unacceptable.
While you have hope, and any parent would have hope for their child, what is it about your son, about Idan, that keeps you fighting every day and hopeful every day?
He's a tall, tough kid. He's a swimmer. We hope he's holding up. We're coming for him, and he needs to survive.
You know, I know that the Jewish New Year is coming up, and the anniversary is coming up, and I hope that there is healing for your families at that time.
Let me explain something to you. There are certain voices that are heard in American media, and people sympathize with them. You obviously understand and recognize the humanity of Palestinians, but many in American media do not. I will always be an advocate, even if it is an Israeli occupying force soldier's parents who are worried about their son, who personally traveled to Israel to do war crimes, okay, to join the war crime brigade. As long as they are fucking calling into account Benjamin Netanyahu's complicity and Benjamin Netanyahu's refusal to put together a hostage negotiation, that's the only voice that Americans are going to hear. They don't even give a fuck if you're like a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes and you're a doctor and you went and you surgically fucking removed shrapnel from Palestinian children's heads. They don't care. If you are pro-Palestinian in any circumstance, they just don't care. They don't even hear it. These are the only voices that are actually heard in mainstream media, as long as they are saying what is true. which is that Benjamin Netanyahu is responsible for all of the hostages that are being killed, and they are not dealing with the Palestinians in a meaningful way to come to table with the deal that exists. You know, I'm here for them. I'm here to listen to what their statements are going to look like. How do we get here where fucking mainstream media is literally 8 months too late to the goddamn game here? Netanyahu derailed a potential Gaza hostage deal in July, Israeli newspaper reports. Wow. Wow.